Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. Carol was 62, maybe 63, the oldest guy on our crew by at least 15 years. This was supposed to be simple work, a 2-week trail-clearing contract out in the Blue Hollow section of the Appalachians, right on that blurred line between Kentucky and West Virginia. The kind of place where cell service is a joke and the nearest town is more of a suggestion than an actual destination. There were 6 of us total. Mason ran the crew. He was one of those get-it-done types who'd done this work for years and never complained about anything. Then there was Carol, then me. Carlos was a forestry student from Murfreesboro. Way too much energy for dawn mornings, but a good kid. Beth had just started trail work and wore a busted knee brace but kept the mood light with her constant jokes. And Ian. Ian barely said 10 words the entire trip. Quiet, odd vibe, but he worked harder than any of us and never asked for help. We were stationed about 7 miles up from the nearest access point. Once you were up there, you were committed. No service. No easy way down. Just one truck parked at the bottom of the fire road, and after a storm on day 3, that truck got blocked in by a rockfall. The rangers said they'd send a cleanup crew soon. That was the last we heard from them. By day 10, we'd cleared nearly 4 miles of trail. The work had a rhythm to it. Swing, haul, stack, burn, eat, sleep, repeat. There was something almost meditative about it, even when your shoulders felt like they were on fire and your hands were covered in blisters. Then things started disappearing. At first it was minor, a gas can, a single rope coil, a pair of gloves, stuff that could have been misplaced or accidentally burned in one of the brush piles. Nobody raised an eyebrow. But 2 days later, we noticed an entire toolbox was gone. Mason's spare boots, too. Then a whole pack just vanished. We tore up camp looking for it. Nothing. The next night, Mason's personal gear disappeared. Not scattered, not torn up by an animal. Just gone. The tent flap was unzipped neatly. No claw marks, no ripped fabric. Food completely untouched. I remember Carlos saying, "Bears don't open zippers," and Mason shot him a look that shut the conversation down immediately. Later that day, Carol pulled me aside while we were stacking brush. His voice was calm, measured. "Someone's watching us," he said. "Not a bear, not some lost hiker. They've been waiting until we're asleep." I felt this tight knot form in my stomach. Like I was just now catching up to something he'd known for days. He said it like he was stating the weather, like it wasn't up for debate. He told Mason, too. "You pretending it's nothing, that's going to get someone hurt." Mason brushed it off, said we'd double-check our gear, start securing stuff better. But he didn't really do anything about it. That night, Carol stayed up. He brewed a mug of instant coffee in that old metal tin he always carried, then sat by the dying fire, with his machete laid across his knees. I remember hearing the scrape of the blade against his boot as I turned over in my sleeping bag. Around 4 in the morning, I got up to relieve him. He handed me the cup, lukewarm by then, and said nothing for a while. Then, "Didn't see anything, but they're close." He didn't elaborate, just stared past the trees like he expected something to emerge at any second. Next day, we moved camp about half a mile west. The new spot was near a spring, quieter, more tucked in, away from this old rusted fire tower we'd been using to hang our food. That tower had started making us all uneasy. Every time I passed it, I caught myself glancing up, even though I never saw anyone there. That evening, we were winding down. Carlos was boiling water. Beth was trying to stretch her bad leg, and that's when Beth spotted something in the trees. It was strung up between 2 trunks. a makeshift rope made of our missing gear, packs, headlamps, shirts, all tied together like some kind of garland. Some of it shredded. One of Beth's t-shirts was knotted around a crushed canteen. Carlos's fleece had been cut into strips and braided into the rope. It hadn't been there earlier. Someone had put it up while we were sitting by the fire. No one spoke. We all just stared. It looked like a warning, or maybe a message. But we didn't know how to read it. Mason stood up, muttered something about leaving at first light, and stomped into his tent. We didn't get that far. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a loud, metallic crash, like something heavy hitting steel, and someone shouting, "Carlos, I think." I scrambled out of my sleeping bag, heart already pounding. 2 flashlights bobbed through the trees. Too fast. Moving with purpose. Then a sharp cracking pop. Gunfire. I hit the ground, face in the dirt, lungs frozen. More yelling. I crawled out and saw Carlos on the ground screaming, blood pouring from his thigh. One of the figures, a man in dark clothes, stood over him with a rifle. Another was tearing our gear off the tents. Mason ran out with a shovel. I don't know what he thought he could do. One shot dropped him flat. Chest wound, no movement. Beth screamed. Ian vanished, literally just sprinted into the dark and didn't look back. Carol was already moving. He yanked Carlos behind the fire pit and clamped his hand down on the wound. I slid in beside them, tearing at my shirt for a makeshift dressing. The blood kept coming, hot and pulsing. We pressed and pressed. The 2 attackers said nothing. One fired another round into the air, like punctuation. Then they disappeared, slipping into the trees like ghosts, gone in under 30 seconds. We didn't chase. We barely moved. Carlos was in shock, shaking, pale. Beth dug through the shredded remains of Mason's pack. Found nothing, not even gauze. I remember Carol growling under his breath. They took everything sharp. We had no blades, no tools, not even a cooking knife. We stayed up till dawn, working in shifts to keep Carlos conscious. The cold settled in hard, and we used whatever scraps we could find to cover him. By morning, we had a plan. Carol and I would carry him piggyback, alternating every hour. Beth would scout ahead. Ian was just gone. None of us saw him again. We didn't even call his name. I think we all assumed the worst. We left Mason behind. It didn't feel real. It still doesn't. It took almost 10 hours to get back to the fire road. We were running on fumes. At one point, Carlos passed out entirely, and we thought he was gone. But then he came to, mumbling something about pine trees and his sister's dog. Around 4 in the afternoon, we saw the glint of metal, a wildlife truck creeping along the trail. We waved it down like madmen. The ranger inside nearly crashed trying to stop. He radioed for a helicopter. Carlos lived, barely. Lost a lot of blood, but they saved the leg. He spent weeks recovering. Beth quit trail work altogether. Carol moved down south and started a bait shop outside a town called Galewater Bay. Last I heard, he doesn't talk about what happened. As for the rest, official story was meth gang targeting remote crews. That's what the sheriff told us. No suspects. No arrests. I asked to see the report. They said it was sealed. Ongoing investigation. That was over a year ago. Back when I was 29, I took a seasonal job as a trail warden in the South Shiloh Range. October was peak season, leaf peepers clogging up every trail, and more than a few deciding fences and boundary markers were more like gentle suggestions. My main job, keep hikers from stumbling into land that didn't belong to the park. One afternoon, I got word someone had set up camp near a place called Red Ash Hollow. I'd never been down there, but I'd heard enough. It doesn't show up on any of the newer maps, and technically it butts right up against land that still belongs to the old Heller family. Most of their holdings are empty cabins and crumbling sheds, but there's always talk that someone still lives out there. Squatters, maybe. Or worse, one of the family who never left. I hit the trail around 3. The usual birds and chipmunks made noise for a while, but not long after the first ridge, everything got too quiet. It's a thing you don't notice until it happens. The absence. No rustling. No distant tapping of woodpeckers. Just you and your own footsteps. I realized I'd missed a turn when I passed this weird rock stack that looked like a fossilized spine. Thick woods had masked the split, and by the time I caught it, I was already following a line of red triangle markers nailed to the trees. They weren't ours. Not park-sanctioned. Looked older, too. Offbeat spacing, sometimes too close together, other times way too far apart. And they were leading me downhill. I figured maybe whoever was camping had followed these, so I kept going. The deeper I went, the more the air felt like old attic dust. Heavy, musty, still. When the slope flattened out, I found what looked like a hunting blind. But it wasn't anything I'd seen before. It was built out of bark slabs tied together with something sinew-like, maybe. And the outside was lined with little bones, maybe from raccoons or squirrels, arranged like some kind of fence. The whole thing had this intentional feel, not just functional, ritualistic. I took out my phone to snap a photo for the report. That's when I heard the whistle. One long, sharp note. Clean, like someone trying to get my attention, but with no warmth in it. I turned quick, expecting to see a hiker being a jackass. But there was no one. Just trees. Still trees. I waited, held my breath. Nothing. Then I saw it, a bare footprint in the mud. Not mine, not recent, but deep, human-shaped. Toes, arch, heel, all there. I was bending closer when I heard someone breathing, right behind me. I spun, one hand already on my bear spray, but nothing was there. Then I spotted him, about halfway up the slope, standing still. No shoes, no gear, just this huge bear skin draped over his back, the snout hanging like a hood. His skin was pale and filthy, but his eyes... sharp. Too sharp. I didn't say anything right away, just watched. He didn't blink or move. When I finally called out, asked if he was okay, if he was lost, he tilted his head. Not confused. More like he was trying to place the sounds, like he hadn't heard words in a long time. I asked again. Said he was in a restricted area. Tried to sound official. Still nothing. Then he opened his mouth and made this noise. Long, low, somewhere between a growl and a scream. Didn't sound like pain or anger, more like someone copying what they think an animal sounds like, but off, like memory had warped it. I took a step back and tried my radio. All I got was static. Then he started walking toward me, not rushing, just this slow, even pace. Bare feet on leaves and rock, totally quiet. I warned him to stop, told him I'd call in backup. He didn't flinch. That's when I noticed he had something tied to his side, looked like a blade. Could have been stone or rusted metal. It was caked with grime, hard to tell. I backed up, trying to keep steady footing on the slope. It was slick with fallen leaves, and I lost traction, slid a few feet before catching myself. My pack snagged on a root and jerked me backward. When I looked up, he was closer, watching. He crouched, hand to the dirt, like he was sniffing the ground or listening to it. His mouth was moving fast, whispering something I couldn't catch. Then he sprinted. I didn't think. I just bolted sideways across the hill into a narrow gully. My legs were jelly, and my pack slapped against my back. I could hear him laughing, this dry, chopped-up laugh. Not really human, like someone trying out the sound for the first time. I hit a shallow creek and waded through, hoping it would slow him down. Cold water filled my boots, but I didn't stop. When I finally turned around, he was gone. I stood there, chest heaving, trying to hear anything over the creek. Nothing, just the water. I climbed the far bank, knees raw from the scramble, and tried the radio again. Say again? That's all I caught before it cut out. I kept moving, following broken twigs, weird rock stacks, and once, no joke, a little bundle of bird skulls tied with twine. All of it felt fresh, like someone had just placed them down. I don't remember how long I kept walking, but eventually I saw a cabin. Not on any map I'd seen. It looked ancient. Roof sagging, door slightly ajar. But there was smoke curling up from a stone pipe on the back side. I didn't want to go in. Every nerve was screaming not to. But I had no signal, no idea where I was anymore, and my legs were giving out. I knocked once. No answer. So I pushed the door open. It was dark, dust floating in beams of light through cracks in the wall, something simmering in a pot over a faint fire. I saw old tools, a bench, some clothes hanging from nails, and masks, dozens of them, hanging from the rafters, nailed to beams, carved wood, twisted bark, stretched leather, animal snouts, horns. One had teeth embedded in the jawline. They weren't just decoration. Then I noticed the skins hanging like coats. Bear, wolf, deer. Some looked damp, like they'd just been taken off. Something. That's when I backed out, heartbeat thudding in my throat, and he was right there, 10 feet away. Closer now, I could see his face properly. Not wild, not crazy, just focused, like he knew exactly what he was doing and had done it before. He raised one hand, palm out. Then he said something. One word. I couldn't place the language. And he pointed behind me. I didn't look. I ran, straight up through brush and branches, thorns tearing at my sleeves, chest burning. I didn't stop until I hit the fire road. A ranger truck passed not long after. The guy inside said I looked like I'd been hit by something. I didn't explain, just gave him the coordinates I'd logged and said someone was up there. Next morning, they sent a team. They didn't find the cabin, just a clearing and a collapsed pile of stones where a structure maybe once stood. I quit the job a week later. Moved to a warehouse job. Nice and flat. No trees. Back when I was 29, I took a seasonal job as a trail warden in the South Shiloh Range. October was peak season, leaf peepers clogging up every trail, and more than a few deciding fences and boundary markers were more like gentle suggestions. My main job? Keep hikers from stumbling into land that didn't belong to the park. One afternoon I got word someone had set up camp near a place called Red Ash Hollow. I'd never been down there, but I'd heard enough. It doesn't show up on any of the newer maps, and technically it butts right up against land that still belongs to the old Heller family. Most of their holdings are empty cabins and crumbling sheds, but there's always talk that someone still lives out there. Squatters, maybe. Or worse, one of the family who never left. I hit the trail around 3. The usual birds and chipmunks made noise for a while, but not long after the first ridge everything got too quiet. It's a thing you don't notice until it happens. The absence. No rustling, no distant tapping of woodpeckers, just you and your own footsteps. I realized I'd missed a turn when I passed this weird rock stack that looked like a fossilized spine. Thick woods had masked the split, and by the time I caught it, I was already following a line of red triangle markers nailed to the trees. They weren't ours. Not park-sanctioned. Looked older, too. Offbeat spacing. Sometimes too close together, other times way too far apart. And they were leading me downhill. I figured maybe whoever was camping had followed these, so I kept going. The deeper I went, the more the air felt like old attic dust, heavy, musty, still. When the slope flattened out, I found what looked like a hunting blind, But it wasn't anything I'd seen before. It was built out of bark slabs tied together with something sinew-like, maybe, and the outside was lined with little bones, maybe from raccoons or squirrels, arranged like some kind of fence. The whole thing had this intentional feel, not just functional, ritualistic. I took out my phone to snap a photo for the report. That's when I heard the whistle. One long, sharp note. Clean, like someone trying to get my attention but with no warmth in it. I turned quick, expecting to see a hiker being a jackass. But there was no one. Just trees. Still trees. I waited, held my breath. Nothing. Then I saw it, a bare footprint in the mud. Not mine, not recent, but deep, human-shaped, toes, arch, heel, all there. I was bending closer when I heard someone breathing, right behind me. I spun, one hand already on my bear spray, but nothing was there. Then I spotted him, about halfway up the slope, standing still, no shoes, no gear, just this huge bear skin draped over his back, the snout hanging like a hood. His skin was pale and filthy, but his eyes, sharp. Too sharp. I didn't say anything right away, just watched. He didn't blink or move. When I finally called out, asked if he was okay, if he was lost, he tilted his head. Not confused. More like he was trying to place the sounds, like he hadn't heard words in a long time. See, some I asked again. Said he was in a restricted area, tried to sound official. Still nothing. Then he opened his mouth and made this noise. Long, low, somewhere between a growl and a scream. It didn't sound like pain or anger, more like someone copying what they think an animal sounds like, but off, like memory had warped it. I took a step back and tried my radio. All I got was static. Then he started walking toward me, not rushing, just this slow, even pace, bare feet on leaves and rock, totally quiet. I warned him to stop, told him I'd call in backup. He didn't flinch. That's when I noticed he had something tied to his side. Looked like a blade. Could have been stone or rusted metal. It was caked with grime. Hard to tell. I backed up, trying to keep steady footing on the slope. It was slick with fallen leaves and I lost traction, slid a few feet before catching myself. My pack snagged on a root and jerked me backward. When I looked up, he was closer, watching. He crouched, hand to the dirt like he was sniffing the ground or listening to it. His mouth was moving fast, whispering something I couldn't catch. Then he sprinted. I didn't think. I just bolted sideways across the hill into a narrow gully. My legs were jelly and my pack slapped against my back. I could hear him laughing, this dry, chopped-up laugh. Not really human, like someone trying out the sound for the first time. I hit a shallow creek and waded through, hoping it would slow him down. Cold water filled my boots, but I didn't stop. When I finally turned around, he was gone. I stood there, chest heaving, trying to hear anything over the creek. Nothing, just the water. I climbed the far bank, knees raw from the scramble, and tried the radio again. Say again? That's all I caught before it cut out. I kept moving, following broken twigs, weird rock stacks, and once, no joke, a little bundle of bird skulls tied with twine. All of it felt fresh, like someone had just placed them down. I don't remember how long I kept walking, but eventually I saw a cabin, not on any map I'd seen. It looked ancient, roof sagging, door slightly ajar, but there was smoke curling up from a stone pipe on the back side. I didn't want to go in. Every nerve was screaming not to, but I had no signal, no idea where I was anymore, and my legs were giving out. I knocked once. No answer. So I pushed the door open. It was dark, dust floating in beams of light through cracks in the wall. Something simmering in a pot over a faint fire. I saw old tools, a bench, some clothes hanging from nails, and masks. Dozens of them. hanging from the rafters, nailed to beams. Carved wood, twisted bark, stretched leather, animal snouts, horns. One had teeth embedded in the jawline. They weren't just decoration. Then I noticed the skins hanging like coats. Bear, wolf, deer. Some looked damp, like they'd just been taken off. Something. That's when I backed out. Heartbeat thudding in my throat. And he was right there, 10 feet away. Closer now, I could see his face properly. Not wild, not crazy, just focused, like he knew exactly what he was doing and had done it before. He raised one hand, palm out. Then he said something. One word. I couldn't place the language, and he pointed behind me. I didn't look. I ran. Straight up through brush and branches, thorns tearing at my sleeves, chest burning. I didn't stop until I hit the fire road. A ranger truck passed not long after. The guy inside said I looked like I'd been hit by something. I didn't explain, just gave him the coordinates I'd logged and said someone was up there. Next morning, they sent a team. They didn't find the cabin. Just a clearing and a collapsed pile of stones where a structure maybe once stood. I quit the job a week later, moved to a warehouse job. Nice and flat. No trees. My uncle owns this small stretch of cabins near the base of Wolftooth Ridge. 6 of them in total, spaced just far enough apart to give people a sense of privacy without making them feel isolated. They sit where Route 17 quietly turns into gravel, and then the gravel just sort of gives up and dissolves into forest. It's not on the way to anything. If you end up there, it's because you meant to, or because you took a wrong turn and didn't realize it until the pavement ran out. He rents them out during the fall and summer seasons. Mainly hunters, off-grid hikers, couples wanting a weekend with trees and no reception. In the off-season, he just locks them up and waits for the thaw. October's one of the busier times. Leaf peepers. People from the city who romanticize wilderness until they hear an actual coyote or realize how loud the woods can get at night. I helped him out sometimes, under the table mostly. Turning over units, restocking, sweeping porches, changing sheets. It was easy money, and I didn't mind the quiet. I'd come up a few days a week, stay in town with friends, or just drive the 40 minutes back home, depending on my mood. That Friday, Cabin 4 checked out early. They were booked for the weekend. Parents, 2 little kids. They left before noon. Didn't say anything. No text, no call, just gone. My uncle noticed when he swung by with more firewood and saw the car gone and the keys missing from the hook inside. He called and asked if I could head up and reset the place. I was already in the area, so I told him sure. Figured it was a quick job. Wipe everything down, toss the linens in the laundry bag, maybe vacuum if the kids had tracked in leaves or snack crumbs. I pulled up around 12:30. Right away, something felt off. The screen door was open, just kind of hanging there, swaying. It's one of those old aluminum-framed ones with a broken spring that lets it drift and clatter if you don't pull it shut behind you. Normally, guests slam it, but this time it was ajar, almost like someone had forgotten it mid-step. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. The cabin looked untouched, but not in the usual way. It wasn't clean exactly. The beds were unmade, but the sheets weren't really slept in. The firewood inside was still neatly stacked by the stove. Even the breakfast box, pre-packed granola bars, instant oatmeal, coffee pots, was untouched. Only one of the mugs had been used, sitting by the sink with a faint ring of coffee in the bottom. The back window was unlatched. That one made my stomach twist. It's not a huge deal on its own. People open windows, forget to close them, but something about it made the air feel wrong. There was a cold draft drifting in. The curtain moved slightly every so often, like it was breathing. Nothing was missing. The place hadn't been ransacked. But there was this feeling, like someone had been inside and then decided to leave all at once. Not slowly, not planned, like they were halfway through something and dropped everything mid-thought. I locked the back window, closed the screen door properly, ran through my checklist quickly but thoroughly. I was in and out in maybe 20 minutes. I should have left, gotten in my car, driven home, and been done with it. Instead, I walked up the trail. It starts behind the last cabin, just a narrow path that cuts up into the ridge. Not marked, not official, just an old deer trail my uncle showed me when I was younger. It goes maybe 2 miles, winding up through hardwoods and rocks, finally cresting to this incredible overlook where you can see the whole valley. Especially in the fall, it's like a blanket of gold and red and rust stretching as far as you can see. I didn't have a reason. I just needed to move. Shake off whatever weird static that cabin had put in my head. The trail was muddy from rain earlier in the week, and about 10 minutes in, I noticed footprints. One set. Fresh. They were clean prints, sharp edges, deep heel. Not boot prints, not sneakers. Narrow, stiff sole. No tread pattern. Definitely not something you'd wear for hiking. They looked almost like dress shoes. Who hikes a ridge in dress shoes? I followed them, didn't even think about it, really. Just kept walking. A few minutes later, I saw the first thing, a flannel shirt. Red, button-up, adult-sized. Draped over a low branch like someone had taken it off and hung it there. Not thrown, not discarded. It was neatly placed. Sunlight was warming the fabric. For a second, I thought maybe someone had taken it off mid-hike, but it didn't make sense. It was too cool to be stripping layers. I stopped and looked around. Called out. Nothing. Just wind through the trees and a squirrel darting somewhere off to my left. I kept going. Then came the sock. One sock. Grey, stuffed into the hollow of a rotten stump like someone had pushed it in deliberately. Not hidden, just wedged. That's when the tension hit my shoulders. And about 5 minutes later, I found the backpack. It was sitting right in the middle of the path. Upright, clean, no damage. Like it had been set down a moment ago. I looked around again, still no voices, no movement, no birds even. I opened it. Phone with a dead screen, charger cord, a Tennessee state ID, girl named Madison, born in 2002. That would make her what? 22. There was a vape pen with a cracked mouthpiece, a mostly full bottle of water, and one hiking shoe. I zipped it shut, didn't say another word out loud after that. Just kept walking. Slower now. Every stick that cracked underfoot made me wince. The trail gets narrow near the ridge. Steep drop on one side, deadfall and bramble on the other. It's not an easy stretch to cross, even on a good day. I crouched when I heard something snap up ahead. A man appeared around the bend. Tall, lean, beard, black jacket, hood up, hands in pockets. He walked like he knew the trail. Confident, not cautious, like he'd been there before. He passed 20 feet ahead of me and didn't see me crouched behind a boulder. Then he stopped, turned slowly, looked behind him. There was nothing there. No sound, no movement. Still, he stared into the empty trail for a few seconds before moving on. Then he disappeared behind the ridge curve. I didn't follow on the path. I cut off trail, slipping between trees, dead leaves crunching under my boots no matter how careful I tried to be. And then I saw her. She was maybe 50 feet below the trail, slumped at the base of a birch tree. Blonde hair matted. Arms wrapped around her knees. One shoe missing. No jacket. Her head lolled slightly when she saw me. She tried to speak, but her lips were trembling too hard to form words. She only said one thing, barely above a whisper. Help. I didn't ask what happened. Didn't press her for details. I knelt next to her and asked if anything was broken. She shook her head but couldn't stand. Her body folded when she tried. So I carried her, back up the slope, onto the trail, down the ridge, step by step, sweat soaking through my shirt even though the air was cool. Halfway down, I heard it. Whistling. 4 notes. Soft. Repeating. Tuneless. It wasn't close, but it was behind us. I didn't turn around, just kept walking. Faster now. Her breath was shallow against my neck. When we got to the cabins, I cut across the grass straight to the main office. My uncle had installed a panic button after a bear tore through someone's cooler a few years back. Said it wired straight to the county sheriff. I slammed it. 15 minutes later, the first cruiser pulled up. The girl, Madison, was barely responsive. She kept repeating the same thing, mumbling it between gasps. Trailhead, 43. Trailhead, 43. A deputy carried her like she weighed nothing. They didn't waste time, didn't ask me much at all. One officer went up the trail with a flashlight. When he came back, he looked different, tight round the mouth. Paler than before. He didn't say what he saw, just muttered something about following protocol and closing the area off. That night, I barely slept. I was 20 when I started doing this yearly fall routine for my uncle, climbing up on the roof of his cabin to clear off the leaves. He gave me $20 for it, which wasn't much even back then. But I didn't do it for the money. I liked the quiet up there. The cabin was in eastern Tennessee, not far from where the state starts fading into the mountains. It sat halfway up a ridge, just past the last switchback on a gravel road that didn't show up on GPS. Real out of the way. Like once you were up there, the world just sort of let go of you. My uncle only used the place during hunting season, but he kept it in good shape all year. Sometimes I think he liked knowing it was there, untouched and waiting, like a backup plan for when everything else fell apart. That year, sometime in mid-October, he texted me the code for the lockbox on the porch and said he'd left a thermos of cider in the fridge if I wanted it. I got there around noon, parked where the road just sort of gave up and turned into a clearing, and hauled my stuff up the steps. The place was just like I remembered. Plain, solid, everything exactly where it was supposed to be. I dropped my backpack just inside the door and went straight to the extension ladder leaning against the side of the porch. The roof was buried in leaves, thick, dry layers of brown and orange that stuck to my boots. The air smelled sharp, like sap and cold metal. I took my time up there. It was one of those tasks that doesn't take a lot of thought. You just move from one end to the other, dragging the leaves into heaps and pushing them off in clumps. There's something weirdly satisfying about it. I was maybe halfway through when I heard footsteps in the woods behind the cabin. They weren't loud, just that steady crunch of someone walking on dry ground. I figured it was a hiker. There's a trail entrance not too far down the hill, maybe a quarter mile. But the thing is, I only heard the steps for a few seconds. Then nothing. Usually if someone's passing through, you hear them come in, move around, and leave. This was just steps, then silence. I stopped raking and stood there listening. The wind had died down. I didn't hear birds or squirrels or anything. I waited a little longer, then climbed down and went inside. I put the kettle on the gas burner and rummaged through the drawer for the logbook my uncle always kept there. He writes in it every visit. Weather, what he hunted, anything that needs fixing. Just little stuff. It was all normal. Nothing recent, nothing weird. I poured some cider and brought it out onto the porch with my book. It was quiet again. Just that kind of emptiness you only get in the woods when everything stops moving at once. That's when I saw someone standing at the edge of the trees. They were just past the clearing, maybe 20 yards out. Not moving. I couldn't see a face, just dark clothes. Hood up, they were facing the cabin. Completely still. It didn't look like they were doing anything, just watching. I didn't say anything. I don't know why. My instinct should have been to shout or go inside or even wave, but I just sat there, frozen, trying to figure out if I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. After maybe 20 seconds, they turned around and walked back into the woods. Slow and deliberate, like they weren't in a hurry at all. I stood up and watched until I couldn't see them anymore. Then I went inside, locked the door, and checked every window one by one. They were all shut tight. I thought about packing up and leaving early, but I knew I wouldn't get any reception until I was almost all the way back to the main road. And the thought of walking that trail in the dark didn't exactly appeal to me either. So I stayed. That night I read for a while by the propane lantern. I had this paperback I'd brought with me. Nothing special. Around 2 in the morning I was starting to doze off when I heard a knock. Not on the door. On the back wall. Just one knock. Solid, dull. Then nothing. I froze. It wasn't the kind of thing you could explain away. It wasn't the house settling. It was a hand, or something, hitting the outside of the wall. I turned off the lantern and sat there in the dark. Waited. 5 minutes later, there was another knock. This time on the left wall. Same thing. Just one. Then silence. Then 5 minutes after that, a knock on the right wall. Always one knock, always spaced out, always from a different direction. What I couldn't understand was how they were moving around the cabin without making any noise. The ground outside was covered in pine needles and twigs. Anyone walking around out there should have made at least a little sound. But between each knock, nothing. I sat there on the floor, my back pressed to the couch, trying not to breathe too loud. I waited for a 4th knock, but it never came. The sky started to lighten around 6. I stayed where I was until I could see the trees through the windows. When I finally opened the door, I looked around the clearing. Didn't see anything out of place. No footprints, no leaves disturbed. The pine needles were untouched. It was like no one had been there at all. I packed up, locked the door behind me, and walked the trail back down the ridge. Didn't stop once. Didn't look back. 2 weeks went by before my uncle called. He asked if I'd gone back to the cabin recently. I said no. He said he'd been up to check the deer stand and found it destroyed. Said the straps had been cut clean through and the platform was just gone. But someone had nailed something to the tree where it used to be. I asked what it was. He went quiet for a second. Then he said it looked like a backpack, nailed flat to the trunk. Straps stretched out like they were pinned in place. Inside was a single sock and a paperback book. Both were moldy, chewed at the edges, like something had tried to eat them. He asked if it was mine. It wasn't. I hadn't told him about the person in the woods or the knocking. I still haven't, but I did ask if he'd ever heard of people living out there, like off-grid types. He said no, not really. But he didn't sound convinced. That night I kept thinking about those knocks, about how clean the cabin walls had been, not a single scuff, no dirt or scratch marks. If someone was knocking, they weren't doing it with their hands. A few days later, I went through the photos I'd taken while I was up there. Most were just routine stuff, trees, the trail, a shot from the roof looking out over the clearing. I zoomed in on that one. There, behind one of the trees at the edge of the woods, was a figure, just barely visible. Same dark hoodie, same frozen posture, but the head was tilted at this weird, unnatural angle. Like the neck couldn't hold it up properly. Too far to the side, like something had bent it wrong. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted the picture. I never went back after that. I'd taken a month off from work, mostly because I couldn't stand another minute behind a desk. My cousin Landon had a hunting cabin near the Kentucky-Virginia border, tucked behind a gravel ridge with a dirt road that barely counted as a road. When I told him I needed space, he said, "Go ahead and use it. Just keep the gate locked, change the trail cam batteries, and don't mess with the propane too much." I didn't ask what that last part meant. The first few days were perfect, the kind of quiet you can actually hear. I'd wake up whenever I wanted, make coffee that tasted like burnt pine, and sit outside on the steps watching fog drag itself off the trees. The cabin smelled like dust and propane, but it grew on me. I even started liking the old radio he left behind, the kind with the metal antenna that only picked up 2 stations if you held it just right. When it lost signal, it filled the room with these strange bursts of static that almost sounded like whispering. I used to joke that it was probably the forest trying to learn Morse code. By day 8, the silence started to feel heavier, the kind that presses on your chest a little. I'd just boiled some coffee and was flipping through a field guide I found in the cabin, half the pages water damaged, when I heard a plastic rustle behind me. A quick, crisp sound like someone adjusting a grocery bag. I turned and saw one hanging from the hook by the door. I didn't remember putting one there. It was tied neatly, double knotted, with a yellow sticky note on the front. The handwriting was neat, sharp, definitely not mine. The note said, "Leave outside for pickup." I stood there for a while, waiting for my brain to catch up. There was no pickup, no trash service for miles. Just me, trees, and the occasional raccoon bold enough to test the screen door. I told myself maybe I'd written it late at night without realizing. Some automatic habit left over from city life. Still, the handwriting bothered me. It curved differently. I carried the bag outside and dropped it beside the fire pit. When I went back in, the radio hissed alive again. This time, the static didn't sound random. It was too intentional, like short bursts arranged in a pattern. I leaned in to adjust the tuner, and under the fuzz, I caught the faintest sound of slow, steady breathing. I switched it off. That night, I couldn't shake the thought of that bag. I left the lantern lit, just dim enough to see the outlines of the furniture. Sometime around 3, I woke up to a tapping sound coming from the back porch. Not footsteps, not claws, tapping, soft, measured, like someone knocking politely with a single knuckle. I froze. It lasted maybe 20 seconds. Then silence. In the morning, I went out and checked. No tracks, no scratches. The bag I'd left by the fire pit was gone. 2 days later, it came back. I'd just finished brushing my teeth when I heard the screen door creak open, slow and drawn out. I grabbed Landon's old shotgun and moved to the window. The moonlight hit the clearing. Empty. Nothing moved. I stood there until the sound stopped. Then came another noise. Plastic again. I turned, and there it was, the same garbage bag sitting right in the middle of the living room floor, swaying slightly as if it had just been set down. I waited. Nothing. When I finally tore it open, inside were brittle twigs, 2 rotting apples, and a handful of dried leaves. I carried it outside immediately and dumped it into the woods. I threw the bag itself over the ridge, half angry, half trying not to look behind me. As I turned to go back inside, I saw muddy handprints on the door, small ones, like a child's, 5 perfect smears across the wood. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. By the next morning, I was ready to leave, but something about giving up felt ridiculous. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was exhaustion. I packed half my stuff anyway, just in case. That night, I double-bolted the doors, nailed the back window shut, and turned the lantern up bright enough to wash every corner in yellow light. Around midnight, I heard one of the porch boards creak. Just once. Then stillness, then the back doorknob rattled. Not a soft jiggle. Someone testing it. Slow, deliberate clicks like a person trying to fit the right key. Click, pause. Click again. I turned off the lantern and crouched low near the kitchen table. My heart was slamming so loud I thought whoever it was could hear it. After a moment, the rattling stopped. Then came 3 slow knocks. Not on the back door. On the bathroom door. The one inside the cabin. I didn't move. I couldn't. My throat went completely dry. The bathroom door was just 10 feet away around the corner. Then I heard the latch shift. The door creaked open by itself. I aimed the shotgun at the hallway, whispering to myself, "No one's here. No one's here." Like it was some kind of spell. But then, underneath the hum of silence, came this soft sound, like someone trying to talk through the wall, not clear words, just low, trembling syllables that didn't make sense. I shouted, "Who's in here?" Nothing. I flipped on every light in that place, searched every inch of it. Closets, crawl space, behind the bathroom curtain, even under the bed. Nothing. I sat on the couch until sunrise, gun across my lap. Every time the wind hit the cabin, I flinched. When I finally drifted off, I had this dream, or maybe it was more like remembering something wrong. I was barefoot, walking through the woods. The leaves were cold and wet. Someone behind me whispered my name, not shouted, just close enough to brush the back of my neck. I woke up covered in sweat, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I went into the kitchen to make coffee and stopped cold. The bag was back. Same one, sitting neatly on the counter. Tied shut. The smell hit me before I opened it. Sweet and rotten. Inside were the same twigs, the same apples, arranged exactly the same way. That was it. I couldn't explain it anymore. Couldn't rationalize it away. I packed everything I could fit into the car, locked the cabin from the outside, and hiked down the trail until I got a single bar of service. I called my friend Nate and told him to pick me up at the gas station near Lake Harland. I never went back. The ranger station I was assigned to sat way out past the old fire roads, tucked in deep where the forest starts to fold in on itself. We were a tiny team, just 3 of us trading off shifts. But that October, I pulled the short straw and ended up covering nights on my own for most of the month. The station itself looked like it had been built fast and left to survive on its own. 2 levels, wood up top, stone below. The wood creaked like it was settling every time you walked across it, and the basement always held on to a little too much cold, like the heat from above just refused to reach it. Probably built in the 50s. Maybe earlier. Whoever put it together didn't think much about comfort. My shift was routine. Keep the radio open, log weather conditions, answer any emergency signals, though we didn't get many that time of year, and take 1 loop around the ridge trail each night. That trail was about 1.5 miles. Quick walk. It followed the curve of the ridge and overlooked a valley that never looked quite right. Too dark, too still. Even in the middle of the day. I used to tell myself it was just the way the trees grew in that pocket. Or maybe the angle of the sun. Something logical. Something normal. One night I was downstairs in the radio room just trying to stay awake. I'd been flipping through weather reports, trying to catch up on old data we never actually used. It was the kind of busy work you did just to stop your brain from melting out of your ears. That's when I heard it. 4 steps. Not quick, not loud. Just slow, solid, deliberate footsteps across the wooden floor above me. Then nothing. I froze, completely still. You know how sometimes you hear something and your brain just instantly goes into this tight alert mode? That's what it felt like. I waited, just listening for anything else. A second set of steps. Maybe something shifting. But it was just silent. Eventually I stood up, moved real slow and checked the clock. Just after 1. I didn't want to go upstairs, but I couldn't not check, so I grabbed my flashlight and crept up. Every door was still locked from the inside, front door, side exit, even the tiny back supply entrance. All bolted. I went through each room, the gear closet, the break room with the half-dead coffee maker, Even the old file cabinets nobody ever opened. Nothing was out of place. No one was there. I stood at the top of the stairs for a while, just listening. Then I went back down and called dispatch. I kept it simple. Asked if there had been any changes to the shift schedule, or if someone had maybe driven out and forgotten to sign in. They said no, just me. I didn't mention what I heard. Figured there was no good way to bring it up without sounding like I was cracking a little. After I ended the call, I noticed something was off. The room didn't feel colder exactly, but the air was off. Still, heavy, like everything had paused. That's when I saw the clipboard was missing. Now I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but I always kept it in the same spot. Right on the hook beside the radio panel. I never moved it unless I was logging something. I checked under the desk, in the corner, even opened the locker. Nothing. I didn't want to leave the room, but I couldn't sit still either. I paced a bit, circled back to the hook at least 3 times just to stare at the empty space where it should have been. My chest felt tight, like I'd just missed a step going downstairs. Eventually, I told myself I dropped it somewhere stupid, that maybe I'd been more tired than I realized. At 2:15, I forced myself to do the loop. I stepped out with a flashlight, tried to shake off the unease. The forest didn't help. It was dead silent. Not just quiet, but really silent. No wind, no night birds, nothing. It was like walking through a photograph, that kind of stillness where every sound you make feels wrong. At the overlook, I stopped and swept the tree line with my light like I always did. That's when I saw it, the clipboard, leaning neatly against the base of a pine, maybe 20 feet down the slope. I stared for a long time. It wasn't just lying there. It was propped up, perfectly upright, like someone had placed it there carefully, like they wanted me to find it. I stood frozen, just trying to make sense of it. My mind was scrambling for an explanation. Maybe it fell into my pack. Maybe I set it down during yesterday's loop and forgot. But none of that lined up. I don't bring it out on the trail, and it wasn't dirty. No watermarks, no scuffed pages. It looked like it had just been set there. I climbed down to grab it, moving faster than usual. The whole time I kept turning around, checking the trail behind me. No reason, just a feeling. When I got back and stepped inside, the radio flared. Just static. Then a short burst of sound, like someone had keyed the mic and let go. No voice, just that one little squelch. I logged it all, time, position, even the direction the clipboard had been facing. It felt ridiculous, but I didn't skip a detail. I rechecked every lock and sat with my back to the wall until sunrise. Nothing else happened that night. But a few shifts later, it started again. Different stuff this time. I'd hear a drawer open and slam shut upstairs. One night, I swear I heard the coffee maker click on, even though I hadn't plugged it in since August. The weirdest was when I came back from the ridge loop and found all the trail maps removed from the rack. They were stacked neatly in a square pile right in front of the radio. I never saw anything move, never heard anyone speak, but stuff kept shifting around, little changes that only I seemed to notice. The other rangers. Their nights were dead quiet. No weird noises, no misplaced gear. One of them even laughed and told me I needed a vacation. I started dreading going in. I'd park and just sit there with the engine running for a few extra minutes. There was nothing dramatic about it. No ghost leaping out, no poltergeist throwing chairs. But something was wrong in that place, and it was patient. My last night there, everything felt off before I even walked inside. I don't know how to explain it. The air smelled wrong, like metal or old wires. I set my gear down at the desk like always, jotted a quick weather update, then went into the bathroom to wash up. I was gone maybe 2 minutes. When I came back out, everything on the desk was gone. Gone. Flashlight, radio, logbook, pens, my badge. Completely cleared, like someone had come in and swiped it all while I wasn't looking. I sprinted upstairs. All the doors were still locked. I checked every corner. Nothing. When I got back to the basement, everything was back. Same positions, same angle. Only difference? The flashlight was on. The beam was aimed straight at the far wall, steady and bright. I shut it off, stuffed everything into my pack, and sat on the stairs until morning. I didn't walk the loop. I didn't touch the radio again. I just waited. At first light, I filed a report. Said the station had electrical issues. Some kind of gear malfunction. I left out the rest. Didn't see the point in explaining what I couldn't explain. I requested a transfer closer to town, somewhere with people nearby, somewhere normal. They approved it without even asking why, and I haven't been back since. I'd taken a seasonal job doing trail maintenance at a small forestry outpost near Hayden Creek, tucked way up in the blue hollow stretch of the Appalachians. Just me, Wes, and Eli, clearing brush, fixing signs, refueling the supply caches at the towers. That morning, like most mornings, I was hauling wood. We kept it stacked in a little shed out behind the main station and used it to heat the cabins and cook when the propane ran low. I had my gloves on, head down, not really thinking about much, when I noticed something off to the side of the path. Footprints. Not boot prints, not sneakers. Bare feet. They came from the edge of the tree line and trailed into the forest. Just 2 clean impressions in the frost. Toes arch, heel. No shoes, no tread marks, just feet. I stood there for a minute, staring at them. The ground was still frozen as patches, and these prints hadn't even started to melt. Whatever left them had done it recently, like minutes ago. I scanned the woods, half expecting to see someone just standing there. Nothing, just trees, and more trees, the kind of dense growth that swallows sound and light if you look too hard into it. Eventually, I just went back to work. I didn't follow the prints, didn't mention it to Wes or Eli right away. It wasn't like I had proof of anything. Could have been someone messing around. Could have been a prank. Still, something about it sat wrong with me. Later that night, when we were all sitting around in the main cabin eating instant noodles, I brought it up. Wes didn't even blink. "Don't go nosing around out there alone," he said. "Some things in these woods don't like being noticed." He had this way of saying stuff that sounded half like a joke and half like a warning. He didn't elaborate, just slurped his noodles and stared into the fire like it wasn't worth repeating. Next morning, I checked the spot again. The frost had melted, and the prints were gone. Not even a dent left in the dirt. But that wasn't the weird part. We were missing a rake. It had been leaning against the shed the day before, right where we always kept it. I hadn't moved it. I asked Wes and Eli if either of them had. They both gave me the same look, mildly annoyed and genuinely confused. Eli shrugged and said, "Maybe a bear dragged it off." I wanted to believe that. Bears do weird stuff sometimes. They get into cabins, play with trash, chew on plastic. But I'd never heard of one making off with a gardening tool. Still, what else could I say? Something barefoot took our rake. I didn't want to sound paranoid. That night, I locked my cabin door. I didn't usually bother. We were miles from the nearest house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, we found the rake. It was standing upright against the old gate at the head of Tower Trail, just propped there neatly, like someone had set it down after use. The handle was clean, the blade didn't have any dirt or rust on it, and there were no prints. Not human, not animal, nothing. The trail hadn't been used in at least a week. There were layers of dry leaves and pine needles all over it, undisturbed, but the rake was there, in plain sight, exactly where someone, or something, had wanted us to see it. "What kind of animal returns tools?" Eli muttered, almost under his breath. None of us answered. That night, things got worse. The tool room door was unlocked when I went to check the propane tanks. Not open, just unlatched. That might not sound like much, but we always kept that place locked. Not because of people, but because of critters. Raccoons, squirrels, the occasional fox. It doesn't take much to wreck a storage shed if something gets curious. But nothing was wrecked. In fact, nothing was even out of place. Except for the axe. It was sitting on the workbench, the blade glinting slightly under the fluorescent light. And someone had sharpened it. Not like a quick touch-up either. It had been honed to a fine edge. I tested it on a scrap of kindling, and the wood split before I could even apply pressure. I didn't say anything to the others that night. I just locked the door and went back to the main cabin. I didn't sleep much. None of us did. After that, we started bunking in the main lodge. Kept the lights on. We tried to act normal, but we were all on edge. Even Wes, who didn't show a lot of emotion, was visibly restless. Then the knocking started. Every night around 3 in the morning. 4 knocks. Always 4. Not loud. Not rushed. Just soft, deliberate taps on the back door. Same rhythm. Same spot. We'd rush outside with flashlights, look around, check the woods. Nothing. No footprints. No broken branches. Just silence and that thick, damp fog that rolled in heavy from the valley. After the 3rd night, we decided to set up trail cams. Wes wasn't thrilled. He didn't trust electronics. But even he agreed we needed answers. We placed one behind the shed, one near the tree line, and one by the water tank. Double-checked the batteries. Made sure they were recording. Next morning, one of them was gone. Not broken, not knocked over. Just gone. The other 2 still had footage, but the footage was useless. Both cams went dark from 2:40 to 3:40 a.m. Just total blackness, then static. We did catch one thing, though. Right before the static started, the mic on the camera near the shed picked up a whisper. Real close. Like someone leaned in and spoke directly into it. "Don't turn back." Over and over again. Same calm voice, same 3 words, whispered like a lullaby. We left that afternoon. No big meeting. No argument. We just packed our stuff. Eli was already stuffing his clothes into a duffel before I even said anything. Wes didn't even finish his tea. I didn't even take everything. Left behind a jacket. Some gear. Half a box of MREs. Didn't matter. We just needed to get out. We hiked the 3 miles down to the truck in total silence. Not a word between us. The woods didn't feel quiet anymore. We got in the truck and left. Didn't look back. I never returned to that part of the range. Didn't even finish the season. Took a job downstate at a busy park near some suburbs. It's loud. Full of joggers, dog walkers, kids on scooters. People everywhere. And that's fine by me. I was 14 when my parents went to Costa Rica on a church mission trip and dropped me off at my uncle's place for the week. He lived just outside Laurel Creek, a tiny spot in Monroe County, West Virginia. His house sat near the bottom of a wooded ridge, so close to the tree line that his backyard never really caught the sun. Even at noon, it felt dim back there, like the woods were leaning in. My uncle worked nights hauling coal in a beat-up rig and lived alone except for 2 dogs that mostly kept to themselves. He wasn't the chatty type. As long as I fed the dogs, locked up after dark, and didn't mess with his stuff, he didn't care what I did. I think he actually liked the quiet. The first night passed without anything weird. Just me, the couch, a plate of spaghetti, and a stack of old VHS tapes he kept in a milk crate under the TV. I watched a basketball game from the late 90s and fell asleep halfway through. The second night is when things got strange. I was halfway through a taped college football game, something from the early 2000s, judging by the graphics. One of those slow defensive games. The kind that's perfect for dozing off to. I was lying on the pull-out couch with a bowl of popcorn, half asleep, when the screen blinked black. Just a quick flicker. Then the channel changed. No sound. No remote in my hand. First it was static. Then the picture cleared. Sort of. It looked like a nature show, but everything was off. Washed out colors. No logos. No title card. Just shaky shots of the forest floor and branches swaying. Then it cut to a close-up of someone's hands, wearing gray work gloves, stacking smooth river stones into these little towers, each rock placed with this weird, deliberate care. Slow. Focused. I hit the remote. Nothing. Pressed power. Nothing happened. Then, just as suddenly, the screen went black again. When it came back, the football game was back on, like nothing had happened. Same score, same play clock, like it had never left. Next morning, over cereal, I told my uncle. He didn't even look up from his coffee. Said the signal out there was garbage in October, that the fog clings to the ridge and messes with the dish. I probably sat on the remote, he added. He wasn't rude about it. Just uninterested. I didn't press it. The third night I woke up around 2, needing to pee. The couch faced the back wall, and right across from it was the window that looked out at the slope behind the house. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and noticed the window was cracked open. Just an inch. Maybe 2. The screen was still in place, but the latch was undone. I hadn't opened it. My uncle was obsessive about the windows, especially that one. Said the bears liked to poke around back there if they caught a scent. He even had a few claw marks in the siding to prove it. I used the bathroom, shut the window, latched it tight, and tried to forget it. The fourth night, my uncle left for work around 7. I heated up a frozen burrito, fed the dogs, and went back to the couch. Around 9, the power blinked. Just a quick flicker, but when it came back, every single light in the house was on. The ceiling fan in the kitchen, the hallway light, the desk lamp in the corner I hadn't even realized was plugged in, even the bulb above the stove. I stood there for a second, just looking around, trying to listen for any noise. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of electricity. I went room to room, turning everything off. The basement light was last. That one had a pull cord. I yanked it once. Nothing. Pulled it harder. Still lit. The cord just swung slowly in a circle. I hesitated at the top of the basement stairs. At the bottom was the old freezer chest where my uncle kept venison and wild turkey. I'd never opened it. Had no reason to, but that night the lid was open a few inches, just wide enough for the light to catch the edge of frost along the rim. There was a smell, too. Wet moss, mostly, but under that, something sharper, metallic, like rusted nails or old blood. I backed up, turned, and walked back upstairs. That night, the back window was open again, a few inches wider than before. I pushed the heavy oak dresser in front of it. Next day, I figured some fresh air might help. I took the trail behind the house that curved around the ridge. I'd been on it once with my uncle, but never on my own. Maybe half a mile in, I saw them. 5 stone towers, waist high, perfectly balanced. Clean river stones stacked with almost obsessive symmetry. Each tower spaced exactly apart, like someone had measured the distance with a tape. And no water source anywhere nearby. No river, no creek, not even runoff. Just the woods, dry leaves, and silence. No boot prints, no tire tracks, not even dog prints. One of the towers had a piece of twine wrapped neatly around the middle stone. Another had a small dried lizard lying across the top rock, positioned with care, like it had been placed there for a reason. I backed away. Didn't finish the trail. Walked straight back to the house, trying not to look at the tree line too long. That night, I barely slept. The couch smelled different. earthy, like potting soil or the air right after you open a crawl space. At 3 in the morning, the TV turned on again. Same washed-out channel. No sound, just footage. This time, the hands stacking stones were moving slower, more careful. The background looked oddly familiar. I squinted and saw it. Behind the third tree on the left, in the distance, was the rusted deer stand I'd walked past on the trail earlier that day. I yanked the plug from the wall. The screen stayed on for another full second before going black. The 6th night, I went out to feed the dogs and came back in to find the fridge wide open. Every perishable item was gone. No eggs, no milk, no leftovers. Just gone. But all the canned food, beans, corn, soup, had been pulled out and arranged on the counter in 3 small pyramids, neatly stacked. Labels half peeled on, each one. I stood there a long time. Then I called my uncle. Straight to voicemail. I called again, and again. Left a message I barely remember recording. He showed up just after midnight. I was outside on the porch with the dogs. He parked, saw me, and just nodded. We walked in together. He looked at the cans, the fridge, the window. Didn't say a word. Instead, he walked to the hallway closet, pulled out his old .22, set it gently by the front door, and told me to sleep in his room. He'd take the couch. I didn't argue. Sometime before dawn, I woke up. No sound, no lights. Just this shift, like the air in the house had changed weight. The smell was back. Stronger now, like mold and soil and something sour. I stepped into the living room. My uncle was still asleep on the couch, rifle across his chest. The TV was off. Window shut, but every cabinet door in the kitchen was wide open, and on the floor, spelled out with dried beans, rice, and spiral noodles, were 5 words, "Still here. Still watching you." I didn't scream, didn't run. I just sat down on the edge of the couch and waited for the sun to come up. That morning, I called my parents, told them I needed to come home early. They were supposed to be gone for 4 more days. I didn't care. I didn't sleep again until I was back in my own bed. I was 29 when things had gotten messy in Charleston. Work was draining me in that slow, invisible way that doesn't look like burnout until you're lying awake at 4 in the morning, wondering why you feel like you've been underwater all day. So when a friend of mine offered to let me sublet this off-grid cabin he used once in a blue moon, I didn't even hesitate. I packed a month's worth of stuff into the back of my car and drove out to McDowell County like I was escaping something. Maybe I was. The cabin was old and basic. It sat halfway up a slope near Beartown Mountain with nothing behind it but trees, mossy boulders, and the kind of silence that presses in around your ears. The only way in or out was a gravel trail that wound down to a narrow county road. No one nearby, no passing cars, no power lines in sight. It didn't have plumbing, just a hand pump out back and a composting toilet in a lean-to that leaned too much. Solar power technically existed, but the panels only worked when the weather and whatever gods watched over 1980s wiring cooperated. I spent the first couple nights reading by flashlight because the battery storage would give out by 7. Still, it had charm. Big windows, a rusting wood stove that groaned every time you fed it, a cot that sagged like an apology. It felt like someone's project they never quite finished, but they loved it anyway. I gave myself rules. No caffeine, no phone, no screens, no talking to anyone unless absolutely necessary. Just hiking, reading, journaling, cooking simple meals, and sleeping whenever I felt like it. I was going to live like it was 1910, minus the dysentery. The first week was tough, not going to lie. My body hated me for quitting coffee. I had headaches and that strange empty fatigue, like my blood had been swapped out with warm sand. I didn't trust the stove for the first few days, so everything I ate was cold or barely warm, and I couldn't even complain to anyone about it. But somewhere around day 5 or 6, things started to settle. I'd wake up with the sun, hike a little, eat some bland oats, write nonsense in my journal, and flip through dog-eared paperbacks someone had left in a milk crate. The silence became less like pressure and more like space. Something in me started to exhale. By day 8, I'd added a new ritual. Every morning, I'd hike up a ridge behind the cabin. It was a half-mile of uphill scrambling to a flat rock ledge where, if I stood in exactly the right spot and held my phone up like a divining rod, I could sometimes catch a single bar of signal. It wasn't enough to scroll or call anyone, but texts would sometimes sneak through. It became my sunrise thing. Thermos of tea, jacket zipped tight, a little trek through underbrush and loose dirt just to feel tethered. That's when I noticed the trail. It wasn't much. Just a thin break in the roots off to the right, almost invisible unless you were standing in the right place and the light hit it just so. I must have passed it 10 times and never seen it. But once I did, I couldn't unsee it. It looked like it had been a real path once. Maybe decades ago, mostly overgrown, the kind of trail that dares you to follow it and makes you feel stupid the second you consider it. That afternoon, I walked down to see Mr. Dorsey, the guy who technically owned the land. He was in his 70s, maybe older. Wore overalls like it was his job, had this way of speaking that made every word feel twice as heavy. I asked him if he knew about the old trail up by the ridge. He stared at me for a few seconds, long enough that I started wondering if he'd heard me, and finally said, "A lot of old things back there, best left grown over." Then he turned and went inside. I didn't ask again. After that, things started to feel different. Not in a dramatic horror movie way, just small, almost laughable shifts. The stack of firewood I'd chopped would be rearranged overnight. Neater. Like someone had taken the time to organize it. I told myself it was wind, or animals, or maybe I'd just remembered it wrong. But then I found a row of acorns lined up perfectly along the porch railing one morning. 5 of them, evenly spaced. The next day was pine needles stuffed into my boots. Not scattered, stuffed. Both boots completely filled. I kept telling myself it was squirrels. It had to be. What else could it be? Then came day 15. I overslept that morning. First time I'd missed my climb. I felt weird about it all day, off balance, like I'd skipped a step going downstairs. Around dusk, I finally headed up. The light was already thinning out, but I figured I'd just sit on the ledge for a few minutes. That's when I saw it. Down the ridge, maybe 100 yards into the trees, was a stone pile. Waist high. I swear to you it hadn't been there before. It wasn't just a pile. It was arranged. Flat stones stacked clean. Deliberate, almost careful. Tucked into the crevices were little objects, a snapped-off watch band, part of a ceramic mug, a strip of blue flannel. And right on top, this black and white photo with a face scratched out in hard, frantic strokes. I didn't inspect it long. I backed away, walked fast, and didn't stop until I was back inside the cabin. That night I locked the door for the first time. Dragged a table in front of it too. The hammer I'd used for tent stakes sat beside my cot like some sad excuse for a weapon. I stayed up reading, or pretending to. Flashlight flickering as the battery drained. Sometime after midnight, I heard the leaves outside crunching. One step, then another. Slow, deliberate, then again. A pause, then more. It circled the cabin once. Then again. I turned off the light and lay flat in the cot, barely breathing. My hand clenched around the hammer. Every muscle was tight. Ready. Though for what, I didn't know. Then silence. In the morning, everything looked normal. No footprints, no disturbances. I convinced myself it was a deer, A bear. Something explainable. Something I didn't need to call anyone about. On the 17th, I hiked down and left a note at Dorsey's place, tucked under the usual rock by the gate, just asking if we could talk. He didn't respond. That evening, just after sunset, I saw light through the trees up by that old trail. Firelight, flickering orange between the trunks like someone had started a campfire just out of view. I stood there staring at it, not moving. It didn't flicker like a lantern or flashlight. It danced. It was real. And when I looked again a few minutes later, it was gone. No smoke, no glow, just darkness. I didn't sleep that night either. By the 19th, I was done. I packed a bag, left food, clothes, gear. Didn't care. I just wanted out. But the car wouldn't start. Battery was completely dead. No warning, no slow crank, just dead. I hadn't driven it in over a week, but still, it felt like something was stacking odds against me. I slung my pack on and started down the trail. About halfway down, I stopped. There were boot prints, fresh ones, bigger than mine, and they weren't headed in. They were coming from the direction of that old trail. They looped around my cabin twice, then went back into the woods. I didn't think. I ran. By some miracle, I made it to Dorsey's porch before dark. He was just sitting there, elbows on his knees, watching the trees like he knew something was still watching back. I told him everything, gasping, probably not making sense. But I tried. He didn't blink. "I told you," he said. Like it was just a confirmation. I asked him who it was, what it was, if someone lived out there. "They don't live," he said quietly. "They don't die either." He let me stay the night, didn't ask questions, just pointed to the couch and handed me a blanket that smelled like wood smoke and old paper. In the morning, he drove me to town, dropped me at a gas station near the county line. I called my friend, told him the cabin was his problem now, that I wasn't going back for my stuff. He could keep my deposit, keep everything. He asked if something happened. I told him the battery died. He said he'd get it towed. I didn't correct him. I took a bus back to Charleston, found a new apartment within a week. Small, loud neighbors, right next to a laundromat that ran all night. And I've never been so grateful for noise in my life. Some say it ended that night, but I still see those stone towers when I close my eyes. I still hear the knocking, and sometimes, late at night, when the world gets too quiet, I swear I hear footsteps circling my apartment. Thanks for listening. If you made it through the darkness, leave a comment and let me know which story got under your skin the most. And if you want more stories like these, well, you know what to do. Until next time, stay out of the woods.